Hey there folks, I am the Mighty Plantain. Thanks for checking out this video. Tonight we're doing something a little special. Thank you Eric G, by the way, for the suggestion. He hit me up down in the comments of a previous video saying he'd like to see my opinion of Brooklyn Lager from Brooklyn Brewing Company versus Boston Lager from the Boston Beer Company, Sam Adams. We don't get a lot of Brooklyn stuff up here, but I've had a few of their beers and I've been impressed. They've got some really good stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the Brooklyn Lager and the Boston Lager, put them head to head. And I'm going to try and keep things as consistent as possible. I tried to find the Sam Adams Boston Lager in a can in order to avoid any sort of difference in taste or possible disadvantage suffered by the can, a candy cap, if you would. Note to self, trademark the word candy cap, because if it's trademarked, they can't use it without paying you. That was the worst Donald Trump impression in the world. Yeah. Moving on. So we're going to take the Boston Lager and the Brooklyn Lager, put them side by side here and do what we can. But I could not find the Sam Adams Boston Lager in a can. I know it exists. I know it's out there. We can't find anything from Sam Adams in a can right now. Thank you, COVID. Fuck you, COVID. My wife, the Lady Plantain, she actually prefers her beers in cans. Sam Adams Oktoberfest is one of her number ones, and she's been drinking tons of bottles of it, unhappily, because we can't get it in cans around here. Which is weird, because a lot of breweries do cans over bottles because it's less expensive and it's an easier operation to set up. So what the fuck's going on now? Anyway, that's enough about that. Let's put these two beers up against each other. Brooklyn Lager. It says it's a hoppy amber lager brewed by the Brooklyn Brewery, Utica, New York. 5.2% ABV. Okay, hoppy amber lager, 5.2% ABV. Now, Boston Lager, I believe, bills itself as a different style, but you could technically say it's a hoppy amber lager. Now, I know, for those of you who might be a fan of the Brooklyn over the Sam Adams Boston Lager, might be a cardinal sin putting it in the Sam Adams glass, but the Sam Adams glass is specifically made to enhance Boston Lager. Yes, I know, I'm giving it an advantage right then and there. But for my money, the Sam Adams Boston Lager glass might not be as effective with other beers, but it does actually work to enhance most beers. Maybe not on the level that a particular, like a stout or IPA glass would for that particular style, but it does seem to do a really good job of enhancing any beer that you put into it. The nucleation point at the bottom that brings up the bubbles, etc., etc., the shape of the glass, it concentrates the nose or the aromas. Anyway, just looking at them side by side, they do have a very, very similar look. I'm going to put these under the light in a minute here. I only have one coaster, so we'll have to do that one at a time. We won't be able to do a particular, a perfect side-by-side. Distinctly complex and balanced. 5%, so Sam Adams loses on the ABV. Does have less alcohol. They do state that they adhere to German purity law. It's not explicitly stated on this label, but they may or may not. Just looking for the style. They don't narrow it down to a style. Distinctively complex. I mean, lager, obviously. I've heard it stated that the Boston Beer Company markets this as a Belgian style something or other. But honestly, hoppy amber lager's a pretty apt description for it. Again, it's not marketed specifically as that. So we're not going to get into semantics about wording and marketing, etc. We're just going to talk about the beer itself. Already Brooklyn Lager is a little bit heavier on the ABV, which is nice. They do both have a pretty distinct and similar look. I was able to get a better head on the Brooklyn Lager. That might be partly because of the can versus the bottle, but I might have poured it more aggressively as well. Now, that's fairly clear. There are some bubbles coming up from that nucleation point, not a whole lot. It's not very cloudy, but it's got that nice amber color to it that you would expect. It's a good looking beer. By comparison, we also have a very nice amber colored beer. I think it might actually be a little bit lighter in color. I think I'm seeing more light coming through down here where it's lighter. I'm seeing a little bit of a more of a yellowish hue and a fewer bubbles coming up from that nucleation point. I'm just seeing one every couple of seconds there. Well, maybe it's not quite every couple of seconds, maybe a little fraction of a second coming up from more spots on that nucleation point, but not a steady stream like I'm seeing here. Okay, yeah, it is a little bit more yellow down here. So very, very similar look to the beers. This one, again, the Brooklyn Lager, does have some more bubbles coming up from that nucleation point. It's coming up more often. Let me give this another look as well. I mean, anybody who's seen it, you might, yeah, the Boston Lager, it does seem to be a little bit lighter in color. Huh, it's interesting. But as I was saying before I interrupted myself, anybody who's seen these videos knows my opinion on the Boston Lager. So Brooklyn's already at a disadvantage just because of my history with Boston Lager. So let's give it the advantage of going first. Gotta remember to sniff it. There's a general beery aroma to it. Bit of graininess. Maybe an undertone of sweetness. Maybe a slight undertone of sweetness. I'm just looking to see. They don't list the IBUs on here because I'm not getting any sort of hoppiness in the nose of that. They don't list the IBUs, but they do say that Boston Lager is at 30 IBUs. I'm used to getting at least a little bit of hoppiness in the aroma of the Boston Lager, but I'm not getting that off of the Brooklyn. But I'm not used to getting that hint of sweetness from Boston, and I'm getting a little bit of sweetness from Brooklyn. There's almost a reminiscent of iced tea aroma because I'm getting that general beeriness and a hint of sweetness, and then there's this weird tea-like hint in the aroma as well. So that's very interesting. General beeriness, slight hint of hoppiness, just not any particular notes, just a general hoppy bitterness, but it's very understated, as always, like the Boston Lager is, in the aroma. Maybe a hint of roastiness. But the one thing that's setting them apart right now is that I'm getting a hint of sweetness from the Brooklyn Lager and I'm getting a slight hint of hoppiness from the Boston Lager. Again, they're both very, very subtly there. It's not overpowering or anything like that. So, I mean, honestly, right now, we're just looking at the appearance and the aroma. Both pretty much the same. Not the same. You know what I mean? In terms of one versus the other, there's nothing to really distinguish one as more preferable than another. That's a solid taste. I'm still getting that hint of sweetness in the finish. But again, that's another one of the more subtle aspects of this beer. Up front, it's got a nice general beeriness. It's got some graininess to it. Maybe a hint of hoppiness in there. It's not overwhelmingly any one thing or another. Okay, there's definitely some hoppy bitterness in there now that I'm getting further into it. And definitely when it comes back, I hesitate to say this because it sounds negative, but when it comes back up, you're going to burp, and if you're trying to stifle it at all, you're going to burp into your mouth, and there's a small burp that comes up, and that gives me a distinct hoppy flavor in the burp. But no specific notes. Again, general hoppiness is pretty average for this as well, for the Boston Lager as well. Pardon. That one didn't stay in the mouth. That one slightly escaped. Both of those did, so. Nice general beeriness, roastiness, hoppiness. It's all really well put together. Hops are definitely coming through more so when it comes back up on you, which again, it's going to. That's not a negative thing. It's just a thing that happens with any beer. And it lingers a bit on the palate too. It's got a nice medium light mouthfeel. So not too heavy, not too light, but smooth and easy drinking. It's a damn good, well put together beer. I mean, still that slight hint of sweetness and that underlying hint of tea, like a brewed tea. It's a very well balanced beer. Again, I'm getting malt, I'm getting hops, I'm getting all the aspects that you would expect from a beer. Not getting any hint of tinniness or metallic taste from the can, which is good. Means that they use some high quality cans that are probably wax lined or whatever they usually do to keep that flavor from coming through. I usually notice that even with the best engineered cans and the wax lining, when you crack that seal, you're shearing the metal, and you'd still get a hint of metallic taste to any beer that comes through a can. I'm not getting that this. So the beer itself is overcoming that flavor. All right, that's the Brooklyn Lager. We're going to cleanse with some water here. It's a good idea to stay hydrated whenever you're drinking anyway, but cleansing with water in between beers is always a good idea when you're comparing them. Don't forget that when you're at a bar and you order a flight of some local microbrewed beers, or if you're in a tasting room or whatever. I think we're fairly clear. I mean, you're never going to completely wash out or cleanse your palate of the taste of a previous beer, but you can get pretty close. Medium to medium light mouthfeel. More distinctly hoppy than the Brooklyn Lager. I mean, it's got a general beeriness to it. Again, it's nice and roasty. Okay. Oh, there's that Sam Adams Boston Lager. I'm sorry, it's doesn't have the hint of sweetness. It's definitely got a more distinct hoppiness. It's got a nice roasty malt backbone to it. Ooh, pardon. I mean, very, very similar beers in appearance, in aroma. Again, sweetness versus hoppiness. But when it comes to flavor, the Brooklyn Lager has a slightly higher ABV at 5.2% versus Boston's 5. But in terms of overall flavor, Boston Lager, just heavier, richer, darker, hoppier, more robust. That's really what it comes down to for me. The Boston Lager and the Brooklyn Lager have very similar flavor profiles, with the exception of the Brooklyn being slightly sweeter and the Boston being a bit hoppier, but it comes down to the richness of flavor. The Brooklyn Lager the flavors are less bold, less in your face, whereas with the Boston Lager, they're all right there. I mean, they're both really well put together. They're both really well balanced. The flavor profiles and all the different subtleties mix and blend very well. But the Boston Lager it's more robust. It's bolder. It's just more in your face. And that's odd because, Brooklyn's got, well, I guess it depends on where you're from. Brooklyn does have more of an in-your-face attitude as their stereotypical personality, Watch a fucking kid's cartoon, and you can tell when a guy's from Brooklyn. Oh, that wasn't even close. I'm not even going to try to mimic the Brooklyn accent because some dude from New York would get in his fucking car and drive up here and bitch slap me tonight, but anyway, this is a really good beer. It's really well balanced. It's really well put together. It's got a lot of things to recommend it, but Boston Lager's still right up there for me. I mean, call it regional bias, call it whatever you want, but in terms of the actual flavor profiles, I'm all about the Boston Lager. Again, I'm not going to turn the Brooklyn down. It's good beer. It's well put together. It's just not as bold, flavorful, and upfront for me as the Boston. Whew, excuse me. Ultimately, I got to say this, because I could sit here drinking them, repeating myself, and going on and on about the same points over and over again. But for me, the Boston Lager is always a 5 out of 5. It is a perfectly balanced, well put together beer that hits all the points for me. There's no particular flavor that comes out and wows me, but just the way that they're all put together and the way they work together and the way it's a perfectly balanced beer is what gives it the wow factor for me. It's 5 out of 5. I will put the Brooklyn Lager at a solid 4 out of 5. And this might not be a fair comparison, and I know people from New York versus people from Massachusetts are gonna yell at me, but you know what? There ain't that many of you. There's only 700 subscribers on the channel, and maybe a couple hundred of you will watch this video. Maybe. More than likely, based on my average views, it'll be less than 100 of you. But the Brooklyn Lager for me is a less intense version of what Boston Lager is. Bottom line. You know, the Boston Lager just has more flavor. And again, I'm going to hit the Brooklyn with a 4 out of 5. It's well put together. It's well balanced. It's really impressing me with how well done the beer is. But Boston's just got more flavor overall. But that's just my opinion. If this video takes off and people are really that interested in it, then I'm sure I'll hear from folks from Brooklyn and folks from Boston in equal measure. But hit me up down in the comments, the email link. Love to hear what you guys have to say about either of these two beers or the two of them together and compared. While you're down there, don't forget to like and share the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I mean, if you want to tell me I'm an idiot, what better way than to subscribe and comment on every video I post? If you want to tell me I'm right, what better way than to subscribe and comment on every video I post? But the shares are the more important thing for me. Was it 700 subscribers last time I checked? I still need another 300 to actually monetize the channel. Not that that's gonna fucking make me rich or anything, but it would be nice to get a couple bucks here and there to buy more beer with. Anyway, I'm not selling you shit. Not in this video anyway. Yeah, so there it is. Boston Lager, 5 out of 5. Brooklyn Lager, 4 out of 5. I already went over all the reasons why. I'm done explaining it. Thanks again, Eric G, for suggesting this video. Thanks to the rest of you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, folks. Cheers. And I don't care which city you back, just drink good beer.